just like cute little lessons from a turtle. So I found that for like $1 at my library's book sale. I have Small Gods by Terry Pratchett, which is a book about a turtle who is a god.
Oh,
and
fittingly.
It's hilarious.
Oh.
So if you've ever read any of the Discworld novels, they're amazing and hilarious, and this author is fabulous. But if you've never read them, this is the one that I started with, and it's amazing. So it's funny, and it's about a turtle that's a god. So I mean, what's not to love? I of course have Of Time and Turtles by Cy Montgomery. So last year, Cy and Matt actually came to the library that I work at, and they had a presentation there, and so they signed my book. And because I'm a rehabber, I brought some of my unreleasable turtles to this program. Fantastic. And so we were just like turtle nerding out like the entire time.
That's so cool.
I have Diamonds in the Marsh.
Oh, that's a really good one. I don't have that book yet.
Yeah, it's a book about diamondback terrapins. It was a gift actually from someone who lives in the next town over from where I work. So him and a bunch of his neighbors, they live on this salt marsh, and they protect like the last nesting ground of terrapins in that area, because the rest of that area is just overtaken by Australian swamp grass, and there's like no nesting ground. So they go in and they have this whole thing that's built, and they go out there and they open it up every morning so the turtles can come in, and they close it every night so the raccoons can't get it, and they count them and they like photograph them. And it's just like a group of neighbors who are super into turtles. And so he comes to the library a lot. His name's John. And he's like, hey, you like turtles. I like turtles. We both like libraries. Here's a book. Fabulous.
That's cool.
I have the Turtle Lover's Guidebook.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to see it.
This is the first time I've been in a book. There's like at the very back, where it says what the state is and different turtle things. Turtle Haven's in there. It's like the first time I've ever been in a book. That's pretty cool.
That's so cool.
I have North American Box Turtles.
I thought that's what that looked like. Yeah, the one by Dodd.
So it's, it's a little bit older, but it's still got a lot of really good information.
Totally.
So, especially when I was first starting out as a rehabber, and, keeping Eastern box turtles, like my first time keeping them, I'm like, what the flip am I doing? So that was really...
I know what that one is.
Really good. And I don't know if you'll recognize this book.
I know that beast. It's perfect. It's a perfect book for the bottom of a stack, because it's like cinder block.
That's why it was at the bottom. It's like holding all the rest of them up. It's the biggest one of the stack. So yeah, that's my little stack of turtle books that I happen to have pulled off of my shelf. That is going to sit behind me.
That's really cool. And you're an actual book expert professionally.
Yes, my day job is a librarian.
That's pretty cool.
So do you have Yun Ro's book?
No.
I'm thinking you'd really enjoy that one.
Yeah, that's a cool book.
I might have listened to that on audiobook. Is that the one where it's the person who's like a monk?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I listened to that one on audiobook for free through my library.
Cool.
Okay. Nice.
That's cool.
Yeah, you mentioned the other one where the turtle's like the god, and I was just like, I bet she'd really enjoy Yun's book.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
that one was it was just an interesting take on it, because a lot of these other ones are factual, but that one, it like tells a story through like parables. So that was a very interesting format.
That's cool. Steve, you want to roll
it? Indeed.
Let's go, baby.
Welcome to ocean too. Stories of the wild brought right to you. Research, rescue, education galore. Saving wildlife is what we're here for. With Anthony, Steve, and Emily. It's turtles, it's tortoises, it's and all things herpetology.
Woo!
Yay, that was so cute.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Pondcast, episode 121, episode 121. It's been a while. We've been doing this for a while. And we're very excited to be here. I'm Anthony, and of course, I'm joined, as always, by Steve. Unfortunately, Emily is not here. Mark's in the chat. He says we miss Emily. Yes, you don't miss her as much as we do. I promise you that. She's become a real backbone of this
She
show
doesn't
now.
miss us. She's in Italy right now.
She is, exactly. She gave a talk yesterday at the CT, the Connecticut Turtle Society meeting, and then literally ran out before it was over after giving the talk to jump on a plane and go to Italy. So we're really excited for her. She's having a good time. But we are here handling things, holding it down without her this time, the first time since she's been a host on this show. And we are joined by our guest we're very excited to have, Ange McFarlane. It says Angelina Carnevale.
So
which
that's
is a
my
little
real
more
name.
on theme.
The other
Yeah.
name is the one I use on Facebook. It's my husband's last name and my abbreviated first name.
Mm-hmm.
I had stalkers once upon a time, so I don't use my real name on Facebook.
It happens. It happens. I'm sorry that happened, but I'm going to call you Carnevale from now on because that's
It's more fun to say.
much better in my opinion. No offense. Yeah, it's no offense to Bobby. Your husband's name Bobby, right? Yeah, okay. I remember. I'm really bad with names. Yep. I was hoping. Anywho. But yeah, we're excited to have you. So Ange, and she goes by Ange as well. Just so everyone knows, she's a turtle rehabber, a very busy one, might I add, and had her biggest year by far last year. So we're going to talk all about that. The name of her outfit, her organization, her efforts that she does for rehabbing is called Turtle Haven CT. And we have a mutual friend, a very, very good friend, Pam, who was probably the busiest turtle rehabber in Connecticut for many years. And she left the state, which left kind of a gaping hole in the rehab community in Connecticut. So there's a couple people stepping up. Ange right there at the top of that list. So anywho, Ange, thank you for everything you do to make the world a better place for turtles.
Thank you. I mean, they deserve it. They need all the help they can get.
Now, another thing that's just I have to call out is this is unprecedented. This is our third day together in a row because we were together yesterday for the Connecticut Turtle Society meeting. And then Saturday we were together. I spoke at the Turtle Summit, which is a rehabber
conference.
Event,
it's like
day-long event. Yeah, it's really nice. Was this your first time going, or had you been there before?
Yeah.
What did you think?
I wish I had something like that when I was a new rehabber, because there's so much stuff that it's like, they had the hands-on wet lab for, if you've never put a shell together before. And then they had more like specific talks on, things like incubating eggs, and then they had, just interesting fun stuff. So they had that artist whose name I forget because I'm terrible, but he was a scuba diver and he took pictures of like turtles and stuff from the underwater angle, which you don't get to see very often. And then of course Anthony spoke. So yeah, there were a lot of great speakers. I don't remember all of them. But yeah, I mean, especially for new rehabbers, I think that would have been like invaluable 5 years ago when I first started out. I mean, like you mentioned, Pam was the turtle powerhouse for quite a while, and she was my mentor, and I definitely learned a lot from her. But just having like this community in the very beginning is just something that I'm glad exists for the people who are able to go to it now.
Yeah, and I love hearing you say that. I mean, maybe we'll skip around a little bit. I want to come back to the Turtle Summit, but that word community is like something that dominates my headspace and what I'm all about, and what I know a lot of the people that I really care about and work closely with, care about. So it's weird. Well, anyway, before I get to that, the Connecticut Turtle Society, that's what we're trying to do. You're a very active member. You've been to every single one of those. I couldn't return the favor when you spoke at Riverside Reptiles. I actually missed your talk, but I know. I apologize this weekend, everybody, in case you're wondering. I did miss your talk a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now, whatever. Yeah, so anyway, supporting each other, being a part of that community, growing the community. And along those lines, now to bring it back to the Turtle Summit and back to the rehab piece, rehabbers and, private keepers, the zoo folks, biologists, we all kind of have different niche, the operation of, what we're trying to accomplish, what we're doing, our day-to-day looks a lot different. And I think there are some people that have their foot in like different parts of it, but it's kind of tough to do that. You almost have to pick a lane and really focus, especially when you get to a level that I'm at and a level that you're at. And when stuff gets really busy and you've got a lot going on, it doesn't make sense to have some rare turtles from China in the same room as some animals, some native animals that, just came from the wild and hopefully will go back to the wild very soon.
That's right.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Talk to me about like specialization and focus.
Yeah. So turtles need help in every aspect of their existence. And, as soon as you get involved, you're like, I want to do this. I want to save this turtle. I want to save that one. I want to save all of them. There just aren't enough hours in the day. There's not enough money in the bank. There's not enough space in the house for any one person to be everything for the turtle world. So like you kind of have to pick and choose what you're going to do. So my main focus is turtle rehab. So like you mentioned, we take the turtles that are injured or sick from the wild, we help them get better, and we put them back out into the wild. So like my enclosures are going to look very different from yours because you're keeping all of your turtles more or less permanently. Their setups are, meant for living in long term. Whereas mine, they're there for weeks to months. I have a couple of like long-term year patients, and those get slightly, bigger setups, but mine is very utilitarian. It doesn't look fancy, but it gets the job done. But I do have pet turtles that are kept separately, and they have much different setups. I have a waterland tub with a red-eared slider in it that takes up half my dining room. But
dedication.
Yeah. Well, I got her when she was this big, from a sketchy shop in Chinatown when I was in college, and the 2 months later the shop was disappeared, and I think it was a deli and then a pizza place and then a pawn shop, so it was very sketchy. But I got this turtle for like $5 or something stupid. But I did my research first. I'm a librarian. At the time I was a library science student, so research is what I do. So before I went out and bought this thing, like everyone else in the dorms who thought it would be cute and fun, I was like, okay, what kind of turtle is it? What does it need? How long will it live? So yeah, it was just like, all right, this thing's going to live forever, and it's going to eventually need a lot of space. But right now it's small, and, it needs these lights. It needs, the filter and all this. So I knew going into it that it would have all of these needs. And, going home for the summer, coming back, I was the only one who still had a living turtle at the following semester because I actually did my research and I took care of it properly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So many people have bad experiences with sliders because they either lose their babies because they're not doing their research, or, sometimes just stuff happens. Or they have a larger turtle that they rescue, a larger slider, and the water's green and it smells bad and everything because it's hard to take care of the bigger turtles. The research is everything, and those early experiences are everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I love my slider, but, I don't need 25 more of them. So, when I get calls like once or twice a week, hey, can you take my slider? No. No,
Yeah, I'm right
I
there with you.
cannot. Even if I wanted to, one permanent pet turtle space takes up 2, 3, or 4 patient turtle spaces, because they don't need as much because it's temporary. They're in a hospital. When you're in a hospital, you get a bed. You don't get a 3-room house. It's like my permanent turtles, they get a 3-room house, but my hospital turtles, they get a bed.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we get calls for sliders and random stuff like that too, and it's like conservation, rehab, neither one of those fits unwanted pet slider. Just doesn't fit either one of those descriptions. And
yeah, I mean, technically, I guess that would be rescue in my mind.
Yeah.
But rehab does have a rescue component. You're out there rescuing.
Yeah.
During emergent situations. It's all semantics, but I agree. Neither one of those fits.
Well, a lot of people don't know the difference.
Exactly.
You have a name like Turtle Haven, and they're like, oh, I can just drop off any turtle that I want. And it's like, no, that's not what it's for. But like you were saying about community is, you get to know the people who do the turtle rescue. So I have a couple of people in Connecticut that I call or, text or send them a message or whatever. When someone calls me about a slider, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to refer you to this person. And depending on the situation, sometimes I'll call them myself. Sometimes I'll just be like, here's their number. And sometimes I will refer them to my exhaustive list of places that take sliders that I know of on my webpage. Because I get asked so often.
What we need to find is somebody who has a private pond that we could fence in and throw all the sliders there, and then take the eggs and start a business selling eggs as reptile food, because they're like superfood and so many different species eat them, and it would be great. But no babies. Yeah. Or just find someone with okay, I'm not going to say it. I would get just run out of town for my ideas about sliders. Okay, I'll be quiet. I mean, I'm not a vegan, right? So I'm not going to go there. I'm just saying I'm not a vegan.
Well,
so if there's unwanted animals that could make a soup, okay, I'll be quiet.
That's something I do get asked sometimes, because I do talk about how sliders are invasive and all these other species are invasive, and how they're pushing out the native species, and what they're doing to the native populations. And people do ask, well, then should we eat them? And I mean, personally, would I eat a turtle? No, but I also eat hamburgers, and there are entire countries that don't eat cows, so it's a personal thing, but cows aren't endangered, and red-eared sliders are not endangered. So it's no matter what you feel comfortable eating, you need to think about what impact that has. So if you live in a culture that eats turtles, don't eat one that, there's only 20 of left on the planet. You know what I mean?
Completely agree. That's my feeling with everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. There's a good question in the chat, and it's a little specific, but I'd like to get into just okay, what is it like? Because we've done 121 episodes, and this was crazy because, like I said, I've had a close relationship with Pam, and I was texting her earlier, and I said, I can't believe we never had you on, because we've never had a rehabber episode, right, Steve? I'm not.
We had our dear friends from Mississippi on once.
Oh no, but we didn't. That was not a rehabbing episode. Oh. That was like a multitude episode, because we had we had multiple, because it was when Chris and Christy and myself were all nominated for that Colonia Personality of the Year award.
We didn't focus a lot on the rehab. Okay. I was just remembering who we've had on.
Christy on for and I'll be honest too, Christy. I love Christy. She's so great, and was one of those early people that really supported me when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with turtles and all of that. And I know for you too as well, Steve. But when we had her on, there was a lot of us, and we had like Chris Leone on, and it was one of the first episodes we had him on, and I'm there, and we tend to chat a lot and kind of take over the whole conversation. So it certainly was not a rehab conversation. I'll just say that. So anyway, I'd like to get into that and to just talk about like, what does it look like a day in the life of a rehabber? I don't know if it sounds like someone's peeing in here. My wife is filling up their water bottle. But Mark asks, how long can you hold an animal in rehab and still consider it for release? Is there a time frame once the animal passes the threshold where it can no longer be considered appropriate for release?
There isn't really an exact time frame. Every turtle is case by case. Basically, the thing with turtles is they don't forget how to be wild. You know, they're not raised by their parents. They don't imprint, you know, like birds or certain mammals do. And if they've been living in the wild for 10, 20, 40, 50 years before they come to rehab, they're not going to forget what their life was like in a month, in 2 months, in 2 years. They're not going to forget the last decades of how to survive. So, you know, yeah, they're smart and they'll get used to being in captivity and they'll chill and they'll figure out, oh, this is where my food comes from. But like once they're ready to go out, like once they're like fully healed and they're ready to go out, you see this personality shift. Like they go from docile to I want to kill you, like, and you know they're ready. They're ready to go out. They don't forget how to be wild. So really, there isn't, you know, a hard and fast rule like X number of weeks, then they're forever in captivity. So as if it was, you know, born wild, and we know where it came from, and we know it has been kept in like sanitary conditions. And I don't mean like pristine hospital sanitary, but I mean like, you know, not in a tank with a bunch of other turtles from a bunch of other places. Like we're doing our biosecurity measures. So we know that it doesn't have any new germs that it didn't have before. It's healthy. It can eat on its own. It can swim. It can walk. It can bask. It can, you know, do all the things it needs to do. You know, as long as it's healthy, it doesn't matter how long it's been in rehab. It can go back out. They don't forget.
Right. So much of it is based on instinct. A hatchling comes out of an egg and it knows what to do. It's kind of crazy when you consider how useless we are.
Yeah, I know.
When we're first in the world, right?
We're like eyes closed and screaming, but they're like ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I once had a hatchling snapping turtle bite my finger while it was still in its egg. Like.
Oh yeah. I've had turtles and eggs want to bite me. Yeah, different species, but yeah, that's so cool. So let's talk about it. I'm gonna just ask you, instead of my long-winded stuff, I'm gonna ask you some quick hitter questions. You could take them and run with it, or we can keep it going. What species do you see the most?
Painted turtles
here in Connecticut. Okay. And what is their ailment that you see them for?
Hit by a car.
I knew the answer to that, but
I would say like 90% of my patients of all species are hit by cars. That's the number one thing that causes them to come into rehab is they've been hit by a car. Because, you know, in the spring, they come out to, you know, find a mate, to lay their eggs. You know, they emerge from their hibernacula. They're going to, you know, where they feed all summer. So they travel over land. And what have we done to their land? You know, we've put roads on it. So like a turtle's top speed on land is something like 3 to 5 miles an hour. The car is going to win.
Yeah, we talked about that for the Great American Turtle Chase. a turtle can't even fathom what a car
Yeah.
is. It's like an act of God. It's like weather. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's huge.
you know, like it's like getting struck by lightning. It's so big and moving so fast that they can't even
Yeah,
register.
the only turtles that kind of figure out what a car is are larger snapping turtles, and that is to their detriment sometimes. So when a snapping turtle feels threatened, it sort of raises itself up on its legs to make itself look bigger and look scarier. So what you see is, someone, instead of swerving around the turtle, they're like, oh, I can put my wheels on either side of the turtle and just go over it. But then you have the snapping turtle in the middle, instead of being flat, raises himself up, and the undercarriage of the car just slices the top of his shell clean off. But that's because the turtle's using its instincts. This big, giant, loud, predator-looking thing is coming towards me. I'm going to make myself look scary. And because it's not laying flat, as it could be, those bigger snapping turtles have some of the more horrific injuries on their backs because they just get sliced from the top right off.
That's an interesting thought. I know that behavior, but I hadn't thought about that with cars and when people try to split the difference with the wheels on each side. What percentage of animals that come to you survive?
I have about a 60% success rate of releasable animals.
That's amazing.
So, that does mean 40% of them either die or are unreleasable. And that can get to you. Compassion fatigue is a thing. Like I've had my share of nights where I'm just like crying and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Why did I do this? Whose idea was this? It's my idea. It's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
Nice one. Taylor Swift reference. I love it.
But you have to think of the ones that you do save, because 60% of the ones that come into rehab are able to go back out and live their lives, but 0% of those 60% would have been alive without my help, or the help of another qualified rehabber. So like you have to think of it that way. It's hard to do that in the moment sometimes when you have like the fourth turtle that died in a row, but you have to sort of big picture it. Like, as I'm sure you're aware, like conservation is a numbers game. And like, it was mentioned multiple times at the Turtle Summit, and I'm sure all you turtle conservation people already know, like turtles take a long time to replace themselves in the wild. So, a single breeding adult is hugely important to its ecosystem. They can take decades before that one adult is replaced in the wild. Whereas, you feel bad when you hit a squirrel on the road, but you know what? There are 8 bajillion of them. Like, I feel bad, like on a personal level, like, oh no, you hit an animal, but like population wise, that one squirrel isn't a huge difference to anybody. Squirrels have 2 litters a year at least, and they're ready to breed, I think, within their first year, whereas turtles, within several months, I think. I'm not a squirrel expert. I'm a turtle person. This is just sort of what I kind of remember from other rehabbers. But like, other animals, they live fast, they die young. But turtles, they live forever, and they take forever to breed, to repopulate. So, some species can't reproduce until they're 10, 20 years old. So that one adult that you get back to the wild is everything.
Totally. Let's talk. Go ahead, Steve. You go.
I was going to follow up with a couple. So of the 40% that aren't releasable, what percent of those are, you find homes for because they lived, but you can't put them back out? And what percent are ones that just don't survive?
Of that 40%, like if we're going like whole numbers here, I would say anywhere from like 35 to 39% die.
That's what I was figuring. Most of them would.
It's kind of rare that you get one that survives, but not enough to live in the wild. And I mean, yes, I have a handful of them. But like I get one or two a year that survive their injuries but aren't releasable.
Okay.
So those ones become like educational ambassadors. Sometimes they wind up at nature centers or places like Riverside. And sometimes they just hang out in my turtle room.
So then of those, let's say 35% of those turtles, then how many do you feel like might have been savable? Or are you finding you're mainly getting success when it's a savable turtle, and typically most of the ones you lose are past that point. You try your hardest, but they were probably past that point.
Yeah, so I would say most of the ones that die, there's not much we could have done differently, because like I'm not a veterinarian. I don't have a surgical team behind me. I don't have like 24-hour access to x-rays and CAT scans, and like, it's like Civil War era medicine. It's you're in your house, you're using, tape and glue. It's you're doing very rudimentary things. You're putting their shell back together. And yes, you're giving them fluids, or you're giving them medication and things like that. But like if there's a minute tear in an internal organ, I will never see that. I will never know that. And it can take them months to die from that. Months to die from, a bleeding internal organ. So like you can, do necropsies and figure out what precisely killed them. And 9 times out of 10, it's something you never would see, because like, okay, yeah, if we have this, 24/7 hospital where they do everything, and, every single patient gets like a comprehensive CAT scan, and we see every little nicked blood vessel, then yeah, I could save a few more. But, for the most part, the ones that die, they weren't going to be savable, at least not from something that I could do. However, there are a number of turtles that would have lived if the person who found it did something different. And this is what really kind of annoys me, is when, the University of Google and, YouTube is great for a lot of things. Like, yeah, you can learn how to fix your dishwasher and fold a fitted sheet, but fixing a living animal is not something you want to wing it on. You just, there's so many mistakes that well-meaning people do that have cost turtles their lives. So like my sort of number one thing is, don't do it yourself if you're not a rehabber, if you're not a trained rehabber, a trained turtle rehabber. Because I mean, what is good for mammals is not good for turtles. What's good for turtles is not good for birds. What's good for birds is not good for, snakes. So it's like you have your own specialty. Like there are very, very few rehabbers who can do all of it. And, sort of jack of all trades, but master of none. Like if someone calls me about a squirrel or a bird, which they do sometimes, I'm like, nope. This is the person you need to call for that. Because like, yeah, I don't do those. Like I will kill one because I don't know what I'm doing with those. And like recognizing that you don't know what you're doing, and finding someone who does is really the most important thing when you find an injured turtle. Like don't do it yourself. And like I've had people who, because they have some education, they think they know better, and they don't. Like I've had vet techs and veterinarians and rehabbers of other species. I've had pet turtle keepers like, oh, I have a pet turtle, I can certainly help this injured one. Like, no, they're different. They're so different. Like if you're a dog and cat vet, I'm sorry, you don't know squat about turtles. Like, like I know more about turtle medicine and husbandry than someone who went to vet school for 8 years if they just focused on dogs and cats, which is what 90% of the vets focus on. So, and it's not their fault, but because they know so much about this one thing and it's kind of related, they just give it the old college try. And like I've had so many turtles die because someone did the wrong thing. They put epoxy on its shell, or they tried to feed it and they got, food in its lungs. I've had them like put glue in between the turtle cracks. Like the glue isn't what holds the shell together. Like like when you get a broken bone at a hospital, they don't put glue on either side of your bone. You need the bone to touch each other to knit together. I've had people use things to irrigate the wounds that are toxic to the turtle. Like and turtle medicine is so different. It's so different. There are things that are great for other animals that will literally kill turtles because their body chemistry is different. It's toxic to them. So it's, unless you've been trained in turtle rehab by a turtle rehabber, don't do it yourself.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think, I could speak just, someone who works in the veterinary space and is obsessed with turtles. There's very few veterinarians that have much knowledge about turtles. Even the ones that are willing to see them will admit oftentimes that they don't have the knowledge. And it's not likely that they have a colleague on call that they can, talk to when it's time to fix that painted turtle shell or whatever. And if they're not going to a rehabber, then that's also proof that they might not have a network for those animals. But like veterinarians, most of them know, I went to school for all this time to understand how to care for 2 species. Now, if I say I'm going to open it up and see exotics, as we call it in the veterinary field, then that means now 10,000 potential species can walk through the door, which is a really daunting thing, which again speaks to that specialization. You want your veterinarian who works with dogs and cats to work with your dog and your cat. And you want your turtle rehabber to rehab that turtle. And the other piece that you said that I just wanted to touch on, that turtle keeper who decides they're going to take the turtle that someone brought them because they know they're a turtle person, and they're going to, well, turtles are really resilient, so I'm just going to see how this goes or whatever. Why risk your collection of the word collection, but why risk your population of, captive turtles? Why risk this turtle with what could be among your collection or population of captive turtles, or vice versa, both directions?
Yeah, because you don't know what that wild turtle has,
Yeah, and vice versa.
And you
really
don't know what your captive turtle has that they are immune to, they don't have symptoms of, but you put their tanks next to each other and water splashes in, and suddenly one of them is septic, and then you're going through like 4 different antibiotics because none of them work because resistant antibiotics. So it's you just and like you mentioned earlier, picking a lane. And it's like, yes, I have pets, but they're in a different room. And
and it's a smaller situation. You're not trying to do all of it at the high level. You're doing a ton of rehabbing, so you're going to be smart about the amount of pet turtles that you have. It's going to be a very small amount. But that's important. That's where that staying in your lane piece comes in. I see people all the time, they want to breed for conservation, what they call conservation, and they also want to be a rescue and take in a bunch of animals. And they also, want to rehab this animal that's sick, that needs help. Like it's a lot, and it's a lot of animals coming and going, in addition to animals that are potentially important that are staying there as long-term, situations. So, yikes! I just think it's a recipe for disaster.
And
specializing in more ways than one is the way to go.
I mean, also there, in addition to it being potentially disastrous for the turtles, no one has that much mental energy or space or money or time, because, like, most people have a guest bedroom. I have a turtle room. Um, you know, I work 40 hours a week at my day job, and then I come home and I take care of turtles in the evenings and on the weekends. And, if I go somewhere, I have to line people up who I know how to take care of these turtles. So it's an entirely, all engrossing process that it's hard to do that for everything. It's impossible to do that for everything. Um, because there's so much need. There's so much need. There's need for breeding. There's need for rehab. There's need for pet rescue. There's need for education. There's need for, zoos. There's need for like preserving the actual habitat. There's need for all of that. Um, Nobody can do it all. So
that reminds me of the question I wanted to ask. You just gave the answer, so we're going to do backwards like Jeopardy. You just gave the answer, and now I'm going to say the question I wanted to ask. I spoke at the Turtle Summit, and it was wonderful. I thought it was really well received. I thought the group of folks there were really, interested and kind to let somebody who's, an ally, but from another piece of, the map in terms of, what we're trying to do with helping turtles in general. And the question was, because I talked a lot about what I wanted to do was talk about how the global turtle, the name of my talk was the Global Turtle Crisis Hits Home, because we have this, vacuum in Southeast Asia that's been sucking in all the turtles for decades now. Now that void is being filled with turtles from America, from North America, and even specifically the Northeast, box turtles, spotted turtles, diamondback terrapins, all of that. So basically, I did speak a lot about the captive side because I thought there's a lot of parallels we can share there. And I happened to talk a lot about McCord's box turtles. I thought that was fun because I had one to show, and then also, just the fact that this is where we could be with some of these animals that are now being snatched from under our noses, really. And the question that somebody asked was, why? Why do it? Why would you waste? Basically, I mean, she didn't say it this way, but why would you waste your time if there's nowhere for that to send them back to, and you're hoping, the chance of the world changing, that things will be better for them in the future? Then why the heck are you wasting your time? And I thought this is such a funny parallel because you're here at a turtle conference as somebody who cares about turtle rehabbing, and I could ask the same question, Ange, or to any rehabber: why are you wasting your time helping painted turtles when the roads are there and they're just going to keep getting run over?
Yeah, and that is a very good question. And I feel like every rehabber probably has their own version of an answer to that question. So like with painted turtles, they're common now, but they're not always going to be common if nobody's helping them. If we just don't care about them getting hit by cars, and their populations are already declining because of invasive species, because of habitat destruction and blah, blah, blah. But, they're not endangered yet, so why care? If you keep the common species common, then you keep the ecosystem healthy. And if the ecosystem is healthy, then it can support more turtles. And if this ecosystem over here is healthy, then the one that's over here that this other turtle uses that's a little bit more rare, that's probably healthier too, because we're conserving the whole area. And, it is about that one turtle that you save, but it's also about the bigger picture. It's, you want to keep the common species common. You want to keep the rare species from becoming extinct, and everybody has their own way to do that. For you, it's breeding them. For me, it's saving them from dying, and giving as much education as I can to the public, because I do go around and do talks. I'm happy to talk about turtles to anybody all day. Like, you will have to tell me to shut up. Uh, but like, so many people just don't know. And there are so many people who, they like, if you know better, you do better. Like, even myself, before I knew rehabbers existed, you know, knowing what to do with an injured turtle. So, my first injured turtle that I found, I was home from college. It was I was at a summer job. I was on my way to my job, and I saw this turtle on the side of the road. And so I stopped for it to help it cross, and I saw that it was injured. And this is sort of pre-internet days. So I, brought the turtle to my work at the time. And it was a library, and my boss was like fabulous. And she was just like, what happened? And she knew I had pet turtles, and for some reason in her head, she thought my pet turtle was injured. I don't know. But I was just like, no, it's not mine. I found it on the side of the road. And I was just like, where can I get help? And she directed me to like the veterinarian up the road, with turn left at the whatever, it's like pre-internet days. And so I went to the veterinarian, and he directed me to a wildlife center. And I called them, and I brought them the turtle. And I didn't know before then that rehabbers existed. So just knowing that rehabbers exist, and knowing that there's things you can do to help animals in trouble. Like, I just happened to pick it up, and my first thought was bring it to a vet, which kind of makes sense. But like, now within the world, I know that most vets don't know what they're doing. But this one at least had the common sense to refer to someone who did, and that vet knew that rehabbers existed and knew to refer. So I don't even remember what the question was.
Don't have to. That's the beauty of it, podcasting, man. There's no rules. There was a comment too at the summit, which was really just a great event. I felt so great coming out of that. There was a question, Steve. I don't know what you think about my answer, but it was, what do you think is more important, the in situ conservation or the preservation of these species that are about to go extinct? Ange, do you remember what I said to that?
You said education was the first
neither
important thing, and the other two were tied. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. And that goes for everything, whether it's, turtles or pandas or human health or, the environment or laws, public policy, education, health, like anything, even like business, finance, whatever, like anything that exists that there's a problem in, the root of that problem is education. And the more education we have, the more informed people are, the better decisions that they're able to make,
Totally. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. We just need to try. Yeah. Steve just in the background chat just said that it's such a root cause of so many of our problems right now. Just lack of education and connectivity. If we don't, and this is the other point I wanted to make too. So this is a great segue. Just in general in society, like if you disagree with someone, then that's it. Block. You're done. I'm not. And really, there's so much opportunity there. Like I talked about how close Pam and I are. Pam and I butt heads a lot on things and respectfully disagree and challenge each other and say, wait a minute. And we have these conversations. I'm like, what the heck? Who are you talking to that you don't know this thing? And she says the same thing to me. Like, what? I don't understand. How do you not know this person? And our communities are siloed. The keeper, or like the general turtle folks, and the and the rehabber folks, and I saw it. I mean, there were literally talks where there were things that were said, and I'm like, oh man, I could have really helped them with this. Like, I incubate a lot of eggs. I could have really helped with this. There's things we're speaking in absolutes, like, oh, those incubators are crap, and I'm like, I don't know. I hatched a lot of really rare, cool species, but there's different expertise that comes out of it, because like the turtle eggs, if you're looking at just the turtle eggs in the Northeast, there's a lot of soft-shelled eggs that incubate in the low to mid 80s, and they like it humid, and whereas a lot of people who are like listening to this podcast, they incubate a whole range of things, huge hard-shelled Asian turtle eggs and little hard-shelled eggs from kinosternids or actinemes that have little eggs that are really hard-shelled, and everything in between. So anyway, there's just a lot. There's the cough that I knew I was going to do. There's a lot that we could learn from each other that I think maybe we, miss because we're not collaborating. So for me, it was an honor to be there with you and everybody, and to spend the last 3 days with you. But anyway, let's just keep doing it, right?
I mean, it's also, it's very humbling when you get out of your lane or your silo for like a minute to see like, what the other side is doing, because you're just so focused on your mission, which you need to be to survive, but just knowing that you don't know everything, and just admitting that we can all learn a lot from each other. So like, if a veterinarian can admit that they can learn from a rehabber, and a rehabber can admit that they can learn from someone who breeds and hatches turtles, and if someone who breeds and hatches turtles admits that they can learn something from people who do like the law side of conservation. If we can all just, admit that we don't know everything and we can all learn from each other. Like, yes, we're experts in our field, but our field is narrow. And it overlaps with so many other fields, and you need to reach out,
Totally. So well said. I love that. Corinne says, don't call out, call in. Love it.
Which, all of this reminds me, Anthony, remember, I think it was my second or third TSA, a bunch of us worked on a talk together about outreach.
I do. Yeah, I remember that.
And one of our big points that we had, because, big thing at the time was, drop the mic, and we were like, no, you don't want to drop the mic. The idea isn't to like give somebody, just kind of a slam point, right? And like, if you're speaking in front of a big crowd, right, the mic is the tool that lets them hear you, right? If you drop it, you're going to break it, and it don't work as well.
That's right.
Right?
That's really
Pass
funny.
it off to the next person.
So don't drop the mic. You hang on to it, because if you try to just get somebody on that point and you throw the mic down because you're like, yeah, I made my point. Well, now you've lost your ability to reach that person again. So,
yeah.
In order to be interesting, we must first be interested. That's not mine. That's Dale Carnegie. Just saying.
Gerard.
Yeah.
What's up, G?
And I think getting people interested is the point of all the education that we do. And there are people who are just like, even with zoos and stuff, like, oh, why are we even keeping these animals in captivity? They don't belong here, blah blah blah. But it's just like, where are you gonna see an elephant though? And if you never see one, why will you care about it? And if you never have a turtle brought to your classroom and you never get to like touch their shell, and you never learn that they can feel it when you touch their shell, then why are you going to care when you see one dying on the side of the road? It's everything is interconnected, and education is
Well
so
said.
important. So, I mean, I love doing outreach. I love talking to classrooms, kids, adults. And, I try not to be divisive. I do get passionate about certain topics, like don't do it yourself.
We all do. Yeah, we all do.
We all have our soapboxes.
Yes,
all
that's
have our
the hill I
soapboxes.
will die on.
Yeah.
but there's so many opportunities to meet people where they are and bring them into the fold. There's so many passionate but misguided people that rather than shoving the law down their throats or shaming them, you can be like, well, I see you're passionate. Let's see what we can change to do it better. It's hard to do that a million times. Again, compassion fatigue. It's hard to do that over and over and over again. When I've gotten like my 20th call about, so I took this turtle because I thought it was an orphan and now it's sick. What do I do?
Yeah.
And like, that might be the 20th time I've had to deal with that, but that's the first time they're dealing with that. And if I'm abrasive to them, and if I berate them and yell at them, and even if I am agreeing to help them while I'm doing it, they're not going to be inclined to reach out next time they come across an injured or sick animal. And whether they choose to take that animal in themselves and do it wrong again, or they choose to just leave it and let it die and no one will know. It's hard to keep that calm all the time, but you sometimes just have to just meet people where they are.
That's such a great point. So in the interest of time, we normally go an hour 15. So, we're not going to end right now, but we're going to start to move towards that. And I'm realizing that we haven't really talked to you a lot about, some of the trials, tribulations. We got into it a little bit, some of the efforts and, that you put forth, especially, it's seasonal, right? But you have animals that all year, but seasonally you get absolutely in it. Do you know, I know that I get the sense that rehabbers, like I keep track of every single animal that I hatch and that sort of thing. I get the sense that rehabbers keep track of every patient that they take on every season. I'd like to know.
We are required by law.
Okay, good. There you go. So it's not just something you do, it's something you have to do. So do you recall off the top of your head, what type of numbers were you doing in previous years before last year, which I understand was your biggest year ever?
Previously, I've been doing like 20 to 30-ish turtles a year. This year, I did 63. And that's just adult patients. That's not counting eggs that got hatched out. That's just adult, well, I guess sometimes juvenile patients if they come in as youngsters, but like that's just patients, 63 patients. That's more than twice any of my previous years. And it's been a struggle. And I can't do it all on my own. And this is also the first year that I've had a lot of help. So I had 3 apprentices this year who are now full-fledged rehabbers. And I will get to pawn off some of the
work that's awesome
to them.
Who wins though, right? You win because now you have partners, right? Close by or close enough. I know one is in Southington, I think, right? Which is only so far away. But who really wins? The turtles. Exactly. Because now they're going to get care. You might be busy one day or away and they can step in and help while you're on vacation, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And, you have to also, as a rehabber, know your limits because, if I'm taking in every animal and I don't say no ever, I'm going to run out of time, space, and energy to care for these animals with the quality of care that they need. And that's going to impact their health and it's going to impact my health. Because, as you know, turtle poop stinks. And
I do know that. I was aware. Yeah.
In case anyone on here was unaware, turtle poop smells really bad. And when you have 30 turtles pooping in a small room at, all continuously at the same time, it takes a lot of effort to clean them up, even if you have filters going and you clean their water dishes every day and all of this. And some turtles like to break their filters. And You come home from work and your entire house smells like a swamp and your husband is mad at you. Um, so it's like,
Yep.
you don't want that every single day, because the turtle deserves a clean tank, and you deserve a house that doesn't smell like turtle poop, and your husband deserves more than 5 minutes of your time because you're not spending all of it cleaning up turtle poop. So,
Yeah.
it's a hard balance. So as a rehabber, you have to learn to say no when you don't have the wherewithal to take that animal in. And that's a very hard lesson that for me to learn myself, because you don't get into this if you don't want to help. You want to help everybody. You want to help every animal. But like last year, I had to start turning people away because I literally had no space. I like every shelf, every square inch of the floor. We had a second bathroom that, we don't really use. And that one was like the quarantine room with the turtles. Like they were everywhere. It was a little mad. And, and thankfully it is kind of seasonal, but if that was like 24/7, 365, I would drive myself crazy. I would drive everybody else crazy. And, you can only run on fumes for so long.
Yeah.
So like, but with more rehabbers, if I say no as a mentor, now that I've spent all of this time training more people, they have somewhere else to go when I say no.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the problem that we've had for many, many years. Like you said, Pam, when she was in Connecticut, before she moved to Maine, like she probably did hundreds of turtles a year. And, she had a lot of space to do that in. But, there's just no one person can do every turtle in Connecticut. It's too much. And, it takes more time to teach somebody how to do a thing than to just do it yourself. But in the long run, it's worth it to have more people to take some of the workload off.
Totally. And I think we do the same thing on this side, on the captive care side. If I really care about the animals, it's going to be tough sometimes. I'm going to have to, do some things that I'm nervous about. Like, in your case with training these new rehabbers, you're putting a lot of time into that for them to maybe decide they don't like it, and then you wasted all that time. Or for us, maybe I'm trusting someone with an animal that I'd rather just keep. And I've been accused of holding on to too many of my offspring and things like that, like, share the wealth, buddy, that sort of thing. But really, if we do care about the animals, we have to share the wealth, share the knowledge. In our case, share the animals, but because when we're not able to do it anymore, it can't stop because we're gone.
Someone has to take up the reins. They'll outlive us.
And hopefully we can create 5. If there's a species I care about, I need to create 5 more of me that will do it 5 times what I did, or 10 times. And it could be the same for you. Connecticut, being a rehabber in Connecticut has been very difficult, but wouldn't it be lovely if it was a whole cadre, a collection of you guys who worked together, and there were 10 or 15 of you? Then that's sustainable. Maybe all the rehabbers do it for longer, and at a high level for longer.
You're not getting burnt out so much.
Correct.
Because you're not the only one doing it.
Right.
And I think for years and years, like there were only like 1 or 2 rehabbers who did turtles. And so, you're getting burnt out. And then when you're burnt out and you can't take them anymore, then there's nowhere for them to go.
Right.
So it can be hard to delegate, especially when you're used to doing things yourself. If you're used to not having help, it can be hard when you're used to being me, myself, and I. But, you have to at some point.
It's true. And consider, you mentioned like not scaring away somebody who comes to you and it's the 20th, 30th time that you're dealing with this thing and you're frustrated. Same thing when we're trying to build that network and help, grow people to be a part of the community. It can be tough sometimes. In veterinary medicine, there's this long-standing, you know, hey, this is tough work. Like, suck it up. You're going to show up in the morning and like, let's go, be ready to work. And like, come on, this happens all the time. You know,
Yeah.
in rehabber sense, turtles die all the time. Come on, suck it up, Buttercup.
But you can't keep doing that because the
correct.
highest suicide and depression rates in the country are people who work with animals. So, like, I looked up the statistics.
Yeah.
It's rehabbers,
Interesting.
veterinarians,
Yeah.
and veterinarians I think are on the same level with like people who operate rescues, and then it's
Interesting.
like police, fire, emergency personnel. So like people who drive ambulances and literally see people dying every day.
Yeah.
Like they have all that trauma that they deal with every day. But
well, because we have to convince people why what we do is important on top of being burnt out with what we do. So
exactly.
like it happens on the veterinary side. Why does this cost so much? Why all you care about is money? Or you know, at the Turtle Summit, the question, why are you doing this? Like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I literally live to try to make the world a better place for turtles. And you're asking me, why am I doing this? And you're a turtle loving person. Oh my gosh, I'm going backwards, it feels like.
Yeah, and then you have the members of the public who don't know that we're volunteers who do this on our own time and our own dime. A lot of people think that the state pays for this, that I'm an employee and it's my job. And because it's my job, they're allowed to, you know, be mean to me. And, you know, that's not true. I mean, A, even if it was my job, you're not allowed to be mean to me. But B, like that's on top of everything else. And it's just so demoralizing when you try, you give your blood, sweat, and tears to save these animals' lives, and because you're burnt out and you don't have space and you say no, they say you don't care. Why don't you take this animal in? Why don't you care? And it's like, I do care. This is how much I care. Do you see the 63 animals in my house right now?
Yeah.
This is how much I care.
Right. Like, there's one last thought that I want to kind of end on as we work towards the end of the show. We were talking, you and I were talking, and you had mentioned how Pam leaving had kind of made a situation where you kind of needed to, but also had the opportunity to, at the same time, kind of step up to the plate a little bit. And your numbers should, you know, prove that.
Yeah.
Like you've been to all the Connecticut Turtle Society meetings. You're really doing the rehabber thing like to the next level. And I'm just wondering from your perspective, how that's been. And, you know, if you could give any advice to anybody who's unsure about getting out of their comfort zone and kind of really embracing that, you know, that type of situation.
Yeah, it's been an interesting experience. This year's been a wild ride. You know, I've been doing this for 5 years now, and you think after so long you know all this stuff, and then you start getting hit with all of the rare species that you didn't get before, and you start getting hit with like the weird cases that you've never seen before. And you start getting hit with the sheer volume that you never had to deal with before. And you realize you don't know everything. And then you have to lean on people. And, you know, it's, as someone who is fiercely independent, it can be hard to accept that. But you're not going to be able to survive on your own. But like once you do accept that and you go out there, it can be incredibly rewarding. Like just seeing like my apprentices when they released their first turtle that they had cared for, and they're just crying and like just having them feel like the full emotion. And, you know, after doing this for so long, you kind of feel jaded and you're just like, okay, you're gone. Okay, you're back. Finally, you're released. But seeing, hey, this is why I do this, you know, getting that back, you know, is really rewarding. And just imparting the knowledge so that someone else can do this and make it their own. And especially because in rehab, we're all flying by the seat of our pants anyway. I mean, you can learn a way to do something, and someone who comes from a different background can have a different perspective. Totally. And they might find, you know, a different way to use the same tool more efficiently, or a more efficient tool to use for the same task, or, you know, something like that. And it's something that you never would have thought of because you just don't have their life experience.
Right.
So that's the joy of spreading the wealth and getting out there and connecting with other people, connecting with other turtle people, turning more people into turtle people. One of us. You just...
I love it. There are several people now who I know who kind of like had a turtle or two that just recently have just gone like fully into it. Even one of your apprentices came and visited my place before they were working with you, I think. Did I send them your way? I may have.
Yeah, you've sent a couple people my way.
Yeah, isn't that great? But that's the whole piece. And you've been here, and you know, I think we are building a community. And the thing I just want to say to everyone out there is kind of like, okay, final thoughts. We do this on the Just Turtles videos, just thoughts at the end. It's like Jerry Springer's final thought. We are doing it here, and I'm telling you, there. In my mind, and everyone says this about their place, I hear people from all over the country say this. My place where I live is not a place where there's a lot of people that are interested. It would never work. And I said that for 20 years. Now, unless you live in, you know, Florida or something, but for the most part, everyone says that. But I don't know about you guys, but I would drive a little ways to go to a turtle meeting or to go to a reptile meeting or to get together or whatever. And it started here. I did like a turtle barbecue. We weren't cooking turtles, but I did like a turtle barbecue and just invited some people, invite only. My wife was freaking out the first time we did it. She's like trying to keep the invite list to like 6. And I'm like,
how many people can I bring with me to crash it next year? Because
yeah, yes, the answer is yes. I'm thinking we can go bigger. Well, this year is going to be like right around my 40th birthday, so we're going to go a little bit bigger, I think, and maybe get all the people from the Turtle Society. But the point is, I didn't know if we'd get enough people. I remember Chris Leone did one in New Jersey. What was that, Steve? Like 8 years ago, maybe, or something like that. And I remember thinking, I wish I could do this, and I don't know that I'd ever be able to, but I wish I could do this in Connecticut. And now we do it annually, and my point is, you build it slowly, but relationships like this build, and, you know, they continue to snowball because, you know, like I said, Pam always knew people that I didn't, and it was weird for me. But now those worlds are starting to come together a little bit, and we're building something really special. So if you're out there and you're thinking we can't do it, there are pockets of people that you're not even thinking about, and also people that aren't as, you know, out there on social media and stuff like that are kind of behind the scenes, that may be interested if you try to do something. So if you build it, they might come. So it's worth trying because it's, you know, it's going well for us here.
Yeah, I have one sort of final thought to add to that is do what you can with what you have. Because 10, 15 years ago, I was living in a terrible, terrible apartment. I had my, 3 pet turtles at the time. There may or may not be more pet turtles in my house now than there were back then. But I was living in like a tiny, tiny studio apartment in like the worst neighborhood of the worst town. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was eligible for food stamps. I was just like not capable of doing anything that I am capable of doing today because I have a steady full-time job that I've been at for 10 years. And I have, a house and I have extra space in said house. So like part of what getting more people involved in conservation is just all of the general things that you need to make society better. Because I wanted to help animals. Like I love animals my entire life, but I was not capable because I was barely feeding myself. So I've been there, and now that I'm not there, just remembering that there are lots of people who are there. And if you care about animals and you want to rehab, but you don't have the space, the time, the money, whatever it is, there's something you can do. Even if it's just following every rehabber page you know on Instagram and Facebook and sharing the heck out of all of their content, you're helping. If it's volunteering even once every blue moon with a rescue or a rehab, like, volunteer days are my best days because, you know, I get twice as much done when someone comes to help me. So you might not be able to take in 63 turtles a year, but there's something you can do.
Yeah.
So there's nothing too small. You know, there's nothing that's not worth it. Just, there's something you can do. You have the power, even if you don't think you have a lot of it. There's something you can do. Even if it's just calling the rehabber. Like, that's the big thing. Call the rehabber. You know, whatever it is, share their content. That costs $0. You know, it doesn't take any time, but it's education and it gets it out there. If you can volunteer because you don't have your own space, but you have lots of time, you don't have your own money, but maybe you have some free time, that helps. You know, before moving to my current house, my extra space in the house was a lot smaller. So there's no way I could have taken in 63 turtles, you know, 2 years ago in my tiny, like, you know, 900 square foot house. So you scale up to your abilities and don't feel bad that you can't do everything as long as you're doing something.
I love that so much. What a great sentiment. And I completely agree. I pinch myself sometimes, literally, and I'm like, I can't believe my life is real and I get to do what I get to do and that all of this happened, because it wasn't that long ago. I mean, I can say things that totally echo what you just said, and I totally agree. What a great ending thought. Thanks so much, Ange, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was
Ange
fun.
Carnavale. It's been a real pleasure. Anyway, my radio just turned on. Awesome. Great, for no reason. We're going to end it right there because I don't know what's happening. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll be back.
Great conversation.
Really, right?
Really
Such a great conversation. And thank you, Steve. And thank you, everyone, for putting up with my annoying cough that's reared its ugly head a few times. We'll be back and better than ever next time. So keep tuning in. Don't be afraid to reach out, and don't be afraid to do something in your community because you can make a difference. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you all.